just difficult when you are upset with me to say hon and blast me.
Yeah, because I'll say boo to Mark, but when I'm upset,
When you're
it's
upset,
no boo.
No boo, baby.
No, it's no boo.
Yeah. Welcome to the New Foundation Christian Ministries B1 Marriage Ministry video podcast. I am your host, Donald McFarland, and my co-host
I
is...
am Natalie Irving Mattox.
Very well, and certainly as is known by now, we are from the New Foundation Christian Ministries, located at shop number 21, Washington Plaza, Kingston, Jamaica. And we are happy to continue focusing on what constitutes a successful marriage, Natalie. Certainly, we have looked at several things, over the period of time, but a critical component that we believe must be eared and fleshed out as much as we possibly can is that of how critical communication is.
Yes.
In any marital relationship.
Right.
What say you?
Yes, I totally agree. It is such an important factor, but it seems we can't just get it right. Research has shown that communication is actually one of the leading causes of divorce.
Or the lack thereof.
Yes,
Yeah.
or lack of communication, that is. So it is a very important component.
Yes.
And so we would want to spend some more time looking at what are some of the barriers
Yes.
to having good communication in your marriage.
Very well.
Right. So.
Right. So certainly over time, there are nonverbal means of communication and
Yes.
verbal means. I think what we primarily want to focus on here is how we verbally communicate to our spouse
Right.
in making the marriage an enriching one.
Right.
Yes, you are saying, and that's what we're saying,
Right.
that this is important to take place between spouses. Yes?
And we want to remind our viewers of even some of the what the individuals in the Vox Pop said about communication.
Yes.
So we could look at what two persons said in the streets.
Yes.
Before we go on to to looking at some of the areas or the barriers as we mentioned.
Well, very well. That would be meaningful too.
Yes, let's go to Janet at this time. Janet Burbick in the streets.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Might I ask you a question, please?
Okay.
All right. Are you married?
Yes, I'm married.
Okay, how long have you been married for?
Well, I've been married for 14 years.
Wow. Wow, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
What, in your opinion, constitutes a successful marriage?
Well, of course, as a Christian, I want to say that having Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, both partners being Christian, is the bedrock of the relationship. But for me, one of the major tenets of a marriage relationship is communication. And I find that when you communicate, you share along certain paths. Some things might seem very menial, but when you're able to talk about it freely, your partner becomes your friend. And so, yes, I'm heading to the supermarket. Oh, I'm having a challenge with this. And then when the tough questions come along, or when you have a disagreement, you still want to talk to that person, even when you're upset and you can't be bothered. Yes, it is important that you talk it out. Yes, when they say don't go to bed being angry, I can attest to that. Sometimes, yes, we want to have the right because, yes, I know I'm right and I'm confident that I'm the one that I'm correct. But sometimes you have to back down a bit, wheel and come again and say, let's talk about it. And let's look back at it. And then we agree to disagree, maybe on some issues. But the truth is that communication is important. A lot of times we hear about issues in marriages. The husband don't know, the wife don't know. No, I believe that we need to talk about the issues. And those, even when it's tough and you don't want to do it, talk about the issues.
Right. So, I think that individual said a lot about communication, and she's so right. I think that, we should not allow the sun, as she said, to go down. Even after we have an argument, with our spouse, and not deal with it right away and talk about it. So I think talking with your spouse is one of the best ways to keep your marriage healthy.
But without blaming, Natalie, just asking who's more likely to do that, if that's a fair question. Would it be the male or the female who just, I'm not talking tonight, well, I suppose another day I'll talk, or it's not a gender issue?
Well, it's probably not a gender issue. I know you want to hit the women for that. Maybe in most cases it is the female who generally hold on to stuff, but men are also like that, Bishop. So I think it's the person.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the person, because I feel women would want to talk more.
Yes.
It's probably the men who would want to just quiet and go to bed, or even walk us out or walk away.
Yeah.
So sometimes, even if there's an issue and you find that you start arguing about it and the woman wants to continue, men generally tend to want to stop. And sometimes that stopping the conversation is not dealing with the issue.
Oh.
So yes, you might still be upset, and he wants to stop and you're not upset.
Yes.
So I think that, sometimes there's a place of not talking while you're upset or when you're angry, but there's a place to finish the conversation, clarify things as you go along.
A recent mention was made. I was in a session and was talking about between spouses, there should not be an argument. I don't know if it's by deliberation you said arguing about a point, but rather that there should be discussion. So when there's an argument, it's about who's going to win.
Right.
But if there's a discussion, it's perhaps how you can mutually resolve the
Exactly.
issue.
Exactly.
But you are saying that the men are more likely to shut down.
Exactly.
Perhaps could it not be because of how we are socialized?
Right. So that brings us to the point of how men are cultured or socialized.
Yes.
Versus how women are. Because I think as little girls, you're taught to express yourself. You're taught that it's okay to cry. When you cry, your mother or your father would come over, and feel sorry for you and start, brush you off and so on, and they'll embrace you. What happened? They start engaging in a conversation right away for you to express your feelings.
Right.
But as a man or as a young boy, if you get hurt, the first thing they tell you to shut up, man, tough it out. You're a man, get up, brush off yourself, man. Go on, boy, and push you off. There's no place for the men or for little boys to express themselves. And even if they express themselves, they come across as, you're a sissy. Some boys are ridiculed that if you talk too much, you're a woman or you're a man. So they start making distinction from early. So boys are not cultured to express themselves the same way that girls are. And I think that is where the issues of communicating starts for men, from they were boys.
Well, I hear you loud and clear, and that makes some good sense there. But it seemed that the thing transcend beyond those, developmental stages, even to adulthood. I don't know if it's necessarily about a man, in this instance, conversing with, and rather than arguing.
Yes.
Sometimes, especially if the man is looking at some things more rationally than the woman may be looking at it, and I'm not by any means saying that women are not rational.
I was about to ask what you mean.
I'm just saying sometimes men just look at things in a very practical way. And because you are at this time processing and asking some questions, sometimes you're abashed even. That's why you're a man and you ask so much question, as if details should reside in the domain of the woman.
That's true.
Not to mention, worst case, if there's a little tiff, and so words are being exchanged. I remember, if I may reference, psychologist Dr. Lee Mixamaj, who makes a point that, men can never be right.
Yes.
If you don't talk, you are dumb. If you talk, you are a sissy.
Yes.
And if you walk away, it's another criticism. And sometimes it gets the worst of men in terms of how they react. So socialization seems to...
Yes, it's very important. And yes, and I think what we need to start encouraging our boys to speak up, to express themselves. It's okay. I think society needs to stop judging them as being, you talk too much. And as you mentioned something about even as men, how practical men think versus how women think. Because I think women, we are more on the emotional side too. And we are intuitive. And we read into things a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that's also another issue. So some of the things that you would just see as nothing, we're having a conversation and you may say something and we already start assessing it and looking at it. But your practical mind is telling you, I just meant to go through the door.
Yes.
But I didn't hear just to go through the door. I'm hearing you telling me to move, for example. So again, it's how women view things versus how men view things that sometimes hinder how we communicate.
Yes.
And because of how we process information.
So, like may have been mentioned before, that the matter of details.
Yes.
Whatever contributes to this posture that men have, and mark you, we hate to be, speaking with sweeping generalization.
Yes, right.
Because it varies from person to person, but, largely speaking, so women are into details.
We are.
Women seem to get this kind of satisfaction out of getting into details, and there's a plus for that.
Of course, yes,
I
of
believe.
course, and we are good at it.
And that's why
Yes.
they make such fine leaders in their own rights and
Exactly, and
administrators
managers
and managers,
Yes.
certainly. But you are saying that this apparent shortage on the side of men goes back to our own orientation.
That's correct,
Where we
yes.
are not encouraged to speak.
Right.
Let's dip a little bit, if you don't mind, into the whole educational
Yes,
process.
right. That's
Because
important.
even when you think about in class of, with, say, kids that grow up to even 15, 16, the more vocal ones, if you're not careful, are the girls. The boys will be brilliant,
Yes.
but not necessarily always very talkative.
Exactly. And
In that very context too, if they attempt to talk and to be the first person that responds to the teacher, he gets bashed and say, you talk so much. And
exactly.
Yes.
Even the teachers do it.
Look at that.
The teachers do it.
Look at
And
that.
then, of course, his peers will tell him, you talk too much, man, sit down. You're supposed to listen.
Yes.
And I think for the girls, it's okay. We're the first to jump up to answer the questions. We're the first to speak out in class. And it shows as well, even in English language, you find that the
Yes.
for men versus women, the proficiency for men versus women. For women, it's much greater than
Yes.
for men.
Yes.
So you find that our young girls do so much better in school.
Sure.
Because expression is so much better than men.
Always more articulate.
Always more
and-
articulate than men. Yes.
Isn't it?
So it is. It starts from very early
An
in terms of how they
interesting
are
area of
cultured.
research, I might add.
Yes.
But speaking from a woman's perspective, then, Natalie, help me to understand, how should I communicate in the relationship that helps to make it an effective relationship?
Well, to be honest, Bishop, one, I think both of us need to understand, for one, our roles too, and also how, and that we are different. So first, we need to understand that as a man, because sometimes I'm talking to my husband and he's not responding. the same way I would expect like my girlfriend to respond.
All right.
You know, so I'm having a conversation and that dramatic kind of energy is not there. And I would assume that he's not listening to me. And so I get annoyed when he's not answering me and giving me the same kind of feedback as if I'm talking to a girlfriend. You know, so even those little things can start an argument. You know, and I say, you're not listening to me. But he said, yes, I'm listening. I'm attentive. I am paying attention to what you're saying. But for me, he's not giving me that ready feedback as I expect.
But naturally, right there, it's begging the question then. Is it really an absence of effective communication on the part of the man, or it is unrealized expectation on the part of the woman that brings about this disappointment?
Could be a bit of both.
Yes, isn't it?
Could be a bit
Because
of
from
both.
which you allude to, he is listening.
Mm-hmm.
He is responding even,
Right.
but not in the manner of how you expect or how you'd get it from another female.
That is true.
So we need to perhaps clarify if it is really that men are, poorer at communicating or not. But in this relationship
Right.
you're talking about, yes, go ahead.
Could I ask, can I ask you though, Bishop, what about tone too? What about tone? A woman's tone versus how a man's tone?
Yes.
Maybe we need to talk a little bit about that.
Yes.
Because sometimes I think our tone
Yes.
can either break or make how the conversation
Yes.
goes.
I'm happy to comment on that. In fact, we could even role play, and our audience may think that you're supporting the women and I'm supporting the men, but not at all. We see how it evolves.
Mm-hmm.
But before I get to especially the tone on the man's side,
Mm-hmm.
there is a tone
Yes.
that women have, which I want to call it the authoritative tone. I could even say an authoritarian tone.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if one Minister Gladys Brown,
Yes.
Superintendent of Police and lawyer in her own rights, addressing us on an occasion or a couple of things, and spoke to the woman about that woman tone.
Yes.
There is a tone that women have, no matter how docile they appear.
Yes, true.
That when they speak in that tone, it attacks
The man's ego.
It may not come in high decibel, but just that connection, and it has the
Yes.
power to evoke a kind of response that
Yes,
is not
that is
necessarily
true.
a hallelujah
Yes,
complimentary
yes.
response. So I speak to that on that side. On the other side, sometimes, quite frankly, in my experience with my wife, I say something and she's calling my attention to it to ask me, why did I speak to her in that tone of voice?
Yes.
Can I tell you, quite frankly,
Yes.
there was no intent to it.
Right.
I was speaking in normal male tone. Now it sounds like I'm attacking. It sounds like I am defending the
Yes,
men.
the men, right,
but it was
I get
male
you.
tone. But I do understand the sensitivity
Yes.
of tone,
Yes.
whether it comes from the male or the female. And we really have to judge that properly.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
We're talking about this marriage that we want to work on in communication. One of the things I say to couples when I'm talking to them and counseling them towards marriage is that I encourage that they have a kind of love name for their partner.
Okay.
In the case of my wife and I, we say hon. Well,
Yes.
sometimes I have to call up on her and say, remember, no, I don't like how you're shifting. I still want to hear you call me hon. Because it's kind of just difficult when you're upset with me to say hon and blast me.
Yeah, because I'll say boo to Mark. But when I'm upset,
When you're upset,
it's no boo.
No boo, baby.
No, it's it's no boo.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's Mark.
Yes. So
And I know he knows I'm upset.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And then I get.
Yes.
I don't get anything out of him.
that's true. When my wife is
That
upset,
tone.
she calls me Donald.
Yes.
You know. All right. So you've asked about the tone. It is very, very critical how you
It is.
manage your tone in speaking to your spouse.
It is.
Mark, we're not arguing for a case where people become oversensitive.
Right.
That everything affects you, and God help you if you have to be changing all the time.
Yes.
But you may come across in a particular way and should be
Right.
sensitive that if your spouse
It's
feel
true.
upset about that, you
And you
change.
find too, Bishop, that when you talk to, for example, if I want my husband to do something,
Yes.
when I speak to him in a more, softer, more respectful way,
Yes.
I get him to do more things for me.
Look at that.
If I try to address him in that strong tone that
Yes.
you mentioned earlier,
Yes.
then I get little out of him.
He shuts down.
He shuts down. He doesn't move on anything.
Now hold on,
You know?
because I know Mark. Mark is a model of a man.
He is.
Very easygoing, compliant, willing, and so on. But that very same nice person,
Very big ego.
you're saying that if you speak to him in a way that rubs him the wrong way,
Very, very wrong. Yeah.
yes,
So you better boo.
yeah,
And you better speak to him in a way that will get him to move.
yes,
Yeah.
that is critically important.
Yes.
So we need to have this kind of very, soft and nice,
Yeah.
communication that will
Right.
enhance the quality
Exactly.
of how we
Exactly.
live. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, certainly, this big issue of communication continues to be very important
It is.
in making of a great relationship.
Yes.
Yes. But you wanted to make a third point, if you
Right.
don't
There's
mind.
a third point about communicating when you're angry, because I think that is a lot of times what maybe lead to even you divorcing. How you really talk to somebody, especially your husband or your wife, when you're upset. And that will break or make your marriage. It's all well and good. You can talk to somebody when it's nice and sweet and you can boo and hun. But when you're in a bad mood, when you're upset, how you address the person, that's important, because that is where now you get the name calling. That's where people will just not be listening to each other. We won't be able to all the effective mode of communication that they talk about, and the eye contact, the good, gesticulation and the energy, everything is basically just, it goes dead when you're upset.
Yes.
You don't remember anything when you're upset.
Yes.
That is when you start, the ego, everything just comes out. The monster, that's when the monster comes out.
Yes.
So there is no, you're not thinking practically. You're not even thinking with any kind of love at that point.
Yes.
You're just angry. And
Yes.
that's where a lot of people marriage gets broken.
Yes. But Natalie, once again, you talk about men walking away from communication, from conversation, from whatever it is. And sometimes it's to avoid argument.
That's true. That is true.
And by now it sounds like I am a supporter of the male clan. Yes? But women have a way, Natalie, to get under the skin of men. Nagging and nagging and nagging. And so the man is not a good communicator because he refuses to respond, because if he responds,
Yes.
it's going to be in the negative way.
That's true.
Yes?
Yeah.
Tell me from your end now how it is this man responds when he's angry. What?
First of all, I agree with you. Sometimes some women can really drive you, and we can be a little bit nagging sometimes. And
bit.
even though I mentioned before that that's a time when you're supposed to, have an ear to listen to your spouse, that's also a time too when you have to be intuitive and know when to walk walk away.
Yes.
Because sometimes you'll get into a fight, a physical fight, because when temper starts flaring up,
Yes.
and people get so angry, that is where you'll find that men will just shut down, and I find men will walk away more than the woman. A woman can keep nagging you, and if you're not careful, some people end up in even abuse at that point. So there is a time when men also have to be a little bit more intuitive and know when to walk away.
Sure.
Maybe jump into your car and drive out.
Got you.
To avoid some arguments.
Got you.
So
communication and more so, good communication is very important in
Yes.
building a good marriage.
It is.
Yes.
Yes.
Must not go to bed at night without talking about the differences.
That's right.
And do not try to make it up with other things, but to learn to talk through the issues.
Yes.
And that by large would guarantee you being on good terms.
That's right.
Talk not only in the night but also in the day.
Exactly.
A phone call in the middle of the day about lunch, how you're doing,
Exactly.
and that women like those things.
Apologize, of course.
And apologize.
No way to apologize.
Who's apologizing, man?
Both parties.
Of course.
Yeah.
How can you help the men to apologize when we are wrong without feeling that we're less than a man? Natalie, sounds like a good note to hold this one on. We will have to come back on this very important of communication towards a successful marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much once again. This is your host, Donald McFarlane, and we are ever so grateful for the support of Mattox Fitness Center and for George Malcolm Walker, who continues to be a producer.
Yes, thank you. I'm your co-host, Natalie Irving Mattox. We ask you to continue to follow us on all our social media platforms. Like us on Instagram at NFCM Official. Follow us on Facebook at New Foundation Christian Ministries. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, New Foundation Christian Ministries. Remember to press the bell. Thank you.
See you next time.